Dear Zimbabweans in the diaspora, today we're going to talk about one thing, and that is how to guarantee that Nelson Chamisa and the MDC Alliance win the election on Monday, the 30th of July. So, we start with a question. In a free and fair election, what is Nelson Chamisa's biggest threat? It's not Emmerson Mnangagwa. It's not Thokozani Kupi, or indeed any other politician on the scene in Zimbabwe right now. It is voter apathy. Yes, that's right. Those people who are registered to vote, but who, for some reason or another, decide not to turn up on election day. So, as an example, in the 2013 election, turnout was just 58%. And if every person who had turned out to vote for Morgan Tsvangirai in that particular election had brought with them just one other person to the election booth, just one other person with them to the polling station, turnout would have risen to 79%, and Tsvangirai would have won with a 50.4% of the vote share. So, our purpose today is to propose a strategy to make this a reality. But we will need the support and help of as many Zimbabweans in the diaspora as possible to make the strategy work. Are you ready? Let's go for it. So to guarantee a win for Nelson Chamisa in this election, what we need is for every Nelson Chamisa supporter to bring with them not one, but two people to the polling station. And if they do this, two things will happen. Number one, voter turnout will rise to 78%. And number two, Nelson Chamisa and the MDC Alliance will win with a 78% vote share. Now, some people may ask, why aim for such a high turnout or try to achieve such a big electoral margin? Well, the answer is simple. Right now, as we have all seen, there are too many irregularities in the voting process for any impartial observer to say that the election will be free and fair. So to guarantee a victory for Nelson Chamisa and the MDC Alliance in this election, what we need is for every supporter of Nelson Chamisa to bring with them to the polling station, not one, but two other people to the polling station. And if they do this, two things will happen. Number one, turnout will rise to 98%. And number two, Nelson Chamisa and the MDC Alliance will win with 78% of the vote. So, aiming for such a high turnout of 98% and targeting such a high electoral margin of 58% helps us to ensure that Nelson Chamisa and the MDC Alliance win. Number one, not just by the simple mathematics of the vote count, but number two, it also creates a statistical safeguard against vote rigging, which we know is happening. And finally, it avoids a violent runoff like we had in 2008. So, how do we actually implement this strategy? Now, I'd like to reel off some statistics which will form the rationale for the strategy that I'm going to now propose. First of all, smartphone penetration, which measures the proportion of adults with access to social media and internet access through their phones. That proportion is only 23%. This means that all these conversations that we have on WhatsApp, on Facebook, largely leave the majority of the population in Zimbabwe. That means 77% of the people in Zimbabwe are not part of these conversations that we have on WhatsApp and on Facebook. And the level of education as far as the internet is concerned, in terms of keeping up with what's going on perhaps with political events in Zimbabwe, is quite low because of how mobile phone data is sold in Zimbabwe, the way bundles are sold in Zimbabwe. Number two, and this is my favorite statistic of all, Zimbabwe has a mobile phone penetration of almost 100%. That means even Gogo in deep rural Uzumba, Marama, Pfungwe, Mount Darwin, Mutoko and elsewhere is reachable by mobile phone. She has access to a mobile phone. And then the third and final statistic, that is the population distribution of Zimbabwe, the demographics of Zimbabwe. 66% of the Zimbabwean population is rural. It means that a large majority of the Zimbabwean population, again, is left out of the conversation. So, for example, as far as the rallies are concerned that have been happening in Harare and other urban areas against the electoral process, many people in the rural areas are left out of the conversation. So, what do we do? Now, this is the simplest part of the strategy. All we have to do is send a text message to our gogos, our aunties, our friends and family in Zimbabwe. Pick up the phone, ring them up and ask them to turn up on election day. Turn up in 3s, in 5s, in 10s, in 20s, in 100s. It doesn't matter. We want them to turn up and vote for Nelson Chamisa and the MDC Alliance on election day, Monday, the 30th of July. Turn up in massive numbers. And if we can ask them to do that, we will change the future of our country forever. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.